Hello and welcome back to Jack Knives Reviews. I'm of course your host, Jack Knives. Today I will be reviewing The Bear. A world-renowned chef, Carmi Barzotto, stops working at his high-end restaurant after he is given his brother's failing Chicago sandwich shop called The Beef due to his brother's abrupt death, much to the dismay of his good-for-nothing cousin Richie, who is trying to keep it together by any means necessary. Now Chef Carmi, with the help of his extremely gifted young sous chef Sydney, are going to try to keep this place afloat and hopefully make it better than it was. What I find fascinating about this show is it really tackles that feeling of working on a food line. The stress, the anxiety, the overwhelming nature of make or break. That sort of thing that they never want to talk about in things that talk about food, because that's a huge part of it. And it's a lot of the reason why a lot of people in the food industry quit. It's an insanely stressful job. And when you see the food and the art and the love and the labor that goes into each of these dishes, not just in the show, but in general in the food industry, if you knew the behind the scenes stuff, you'd appreciate it that much more. And this show is a perfect encapsulation of that. Each of them kind of represent different versions of anxiety and stress. Each of them are dealing with their own stress and anxieties in their personal lives that's actually interfering, or sometimes it's just directing them in the wrong way, or it's making them feel a certain way. The perfect way to explain this series is anxiety. And that can be very overwhelming for a lot of people, but it does feel like a necessity to discuss that's never really discussed in media anymore. That's never really been talked about in this sort of setting before. One of the major standouts is Ayo Edebiri as Sydney. She's the young, kind of hopeful chef that's trying to be under Carmi's wing, kind of follows in his footsteps. She is extremely talented in her own way, but she's also very headstrong. And the major problem is Carmi's kind of like that too. He's much bigger in his head, or at least how he perceives himself, than he actually is. Well, I should rephrase that. He's a lot smaller in his head, but he's a lot bigger bombastically outward than he is internally. Whereas Sydney is the exact opposite. She is very much internally knows she's better than how she's projecting herself. Moss-Bachrach plays Richie, and I really believe that he's kind of the driving force of this entire show. I mean, he's the everyman. He's the person that's not really into cooking. He's just kind of doing this maybe out of obligation, maybe out of guilt, just finding some form of stability in his life. And we kind of see his progression from season 1 to season 2. And it's a dynamic shift, but it's a natural dynamic shift. That's a kind of necessity that we kind of experience in each other's lives that we can really relate to. Especially if you're in a position where you've ever hit rock bottom or close to rock bottom, and you have nothing to look forward to, but you're given a rare opportunity to kind of turn yourself around, and you're trying everything to make it work. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. That's kind of what the series is about, is essentially redemption and making something better out of the crap that you're given. But of course, the standout star is the main guy himself, who plays Chef Carmi, Jeremy Allen White. Now, I've seen Jeremy Allen White in Shameless and a few other things, and to be fair, he's always kind of come off as just this weird, awkward guy. That's kind of his whole thing. But here, there's this gravity to him. It's this subtlety that he puts into the performance that keeps you invested. Like, what is going on behind his head? And you don't really know. You see little images of a bear that he sees in his own head. He sees things that he really doesn't want to accept the grief of his passing family member. He doesn't want to accept the toxicity of his family. He doesn't want to accept the fact that he ran away from things. He doesn't want to really accept a lot of stuff in his life because that would imply fault, and he's kind of desensitized himself to think he's not allowed to experience faults. It's not that he doesn't have them. He knows he has them. It's the matter of he doesn't want to accept them. And that kind of toxic mindset really, really starts dragging you down and dragging him down. And we are kind of digging into this anxiety situation constantly in this series. His relationship with his sister, his relationship with Richie, his relationship with his uncle, his relationship with his mom, his relationship with the entire restaurant. Everything is about relationships and how they kind of are too many juggling balls that you're trying to handle when you can barely handle the one that is yourself. Christopher Storer is the creator of this, and he's most famous for working with Bo Burnham and all of his major specials, and he also helped him make the movie 8th Grade. And if you've seen 8th Grade, that also tackles subjects such as anxiety, dealing with things around you, and trying to accept who you are in the real world. Christopher Storer is really, really good at making that sort of story, and this is the perfect encapsulation of what that feels like. Now, this series isn't for everybody because, again, it deals with anxiety, which can trigger a lot of people. And it deals with food. The food is fantastic and gorgeous and beautifully shot and looks like something that you would actually order at a restaurant. Even things as simple as the sandwiches that they make in season 1, I'm like, I could tell they look easy to make, but they're clearly not. You see the heart and soul that goes into their food, and you really kind of want to eat it. And that's what is kind of so cool about the series, is the food is kind of what ties everything all together. And in that same way, Jeremy Allen White, deservingly winning an Emmy for this performance, brings this entire crew together, and he does it in a genuine way that I really just can't describe unless you've seen the series, and I highly, highly recommend this series. I give The Bear 4.5 out of 5. Have you seen The Bear? Let me know in the comments down below. As always, I'll see you next time.